me do that. I don't want to block the name out. I guess I'll just go up here. How's that? That looks all right.
Yeah, we could make the name a bit smaller too.
What's that?
You could make the names a bit smaller.
I can make myself smaller. There we go. That's even better. I don't know what the deal is with this thing. It won't let me do that. It's
Oh,
a
I
great,
saw another one.
yeah. And sometimes I can't put it up because it's so big that it blocks the people out. I'm going to tag you while we're waiting another 90 seconds for people to
I'm
come in. We
seeing
got,
it live.
yeah, yeah. I'm going to go ahead and tag you. That way it's automatically already set up for you. Uh, yeah, it's good to get in touch with y'all. Lots been going on, as you know. I'm anxious to see how the end of 2022 went for you. Here, let me get this. Boom,
Ah,
Jelelle, A W E N. There we are. Okay, we're good. Okay, I tagged you. And we've got 18 people in the house. First show of the day. Test, test, test. My mic is hot. Test, 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 test. Okay. And y'all sound great. And you
oh,
look
good.
great. And you look fantastic. Um, yeah. How was that 2022 for you? No, it's good to have y'all here. Let's officially welcome Raphael and Jelelle. They've been on before.
You,
Yeah. Go ahead. Go
thank
ahead.
you so much. We're really, really honored to be here with your audience that you've pulled together so massively compared to ours.
Well, really. I mean, mine's a bit different. I think mine. It's not mine, but it's just it's really a bunch of y'all. So we get messages every day thanking Todd Morgan, but it's really the people. The guests that come on.
Yeah.
And it seems to really be ramping up for me anyway as we get into 2023 and we're all starting to get what would you say, more deeply embedded into the guidance that's got us to this crazy point. Just basically people following their own passions and their own purposes. And so as that starts to solidify and materialize, I'm understanding the great value of people such as yourself that come on the show and those that come on the show who don't have huge communities, and the gold that they offer. I was telling Morgan a couple days ago because I study a lot of podcasts and just different platforms. And number one, I've known for a long time, and I've talked about it. There's no women. All the major podcasts are run by men, and there's a masculine. I don't want to say patriarchal or distorted frequency, but certainly old patterns of the paradigm that we're leaving behind. But the other thing that I notice that I'm really is in my sites is I see these people go, and I'm not taking anything away from anybody. They go on Gaia TV, they go on Ancient Aliens, that talk about having been in Atlantis or Lemuria or Orion or Arcturus or whatever the case may be, and they tell these stories, and I think to myself, wait a minute, everyone that comes on the show has the same story. And this is what I really want to get out this year with people like you is that society or the typical societal appraisal systems would look at, oh, you don't, they're not that well known, but it's upside down, it's inverse, and whatever you're doing and people like you, it's being felt far beyond any number of likes or views or that type of thing. And I think the third thing, which is really a big part of what y'all carry, is the information that people have. We're all becoming more and more accustomed, let go or be dragged, with a conscious, consistent communion. And as a result of that, we're all channeling more fluidly, just in our normal conversations. So this is what I really feel like the world needs to see, is that there's people all over the world, just like the people that think they're weird and no one is like them. So now, and then of course your work with the couples, twin flames, couples, whatever we want to call it, has really, in this last week, has really come to the surface in my work, there's been 3 occasions where 2 on the air and 1 privately, where the emphasis of the message or the intel, and it wasn't just that, it was the passion and the conviction and the realistic factuality of it, and that is that these people referring to the importance of these couples, and not to be confused with the convolution of I want to find my right person and we live happily ever after. That these couples actually came here to do some serious work, and that the journey hasn't been that easy. In fact, for those that made it through into 2023 still intact, because I know many couples that didn't, that did great work together. But I would say that they've been through a tremendous amount. And now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because you guys, this is the part of the focus of your work. And also, I noticed last time we talked, you were very open. And I thought I would just start here. You guys have held the higher ground. You've been out there doing the work. And at the, I want to say July to, I think everybody, from what I can gather, July through probably November 22nd, it was an absolute bonfire for the shadow, for the programming, for the chaos and the drama and the toxicity of codependence frequency, which we're leaving behind and transforming. And again, many individuals went through a lot, many couples went through a lot, and many groups went through a lot. I'd just like to start there, and you can just go as deep as you want. Don't ever think you have to talk about anything that's personal. But how was that ride for you two? Because I know that from being in the chair that I'm sitting in and observing other people primarily, a lot of times people think that the Raphael and Jelelles don't have bumps and bruises, and that they wake up with a Buddha smile on their face every morning, and then constant energetic congenital motion with each other all day long. So yeah, I just thought maybe we could start there if it's okay, and we can get into whatever y'all want to discuss or do as we get into the show.
Thank you, Todd. The arc of our relationship, it's been 15 years together coming up, but that has been marked with much bumps in the road and change. And even at the very inception of our relationship was leaving a community and being kicked out of a group that we met in, and that was very dear to us. And so it was starting so tiny with just the two of us in our shared resonance field, and leaving soon after, marked with leaving geography and leaving family and friends behind, that we were just on another wavelength. And that really concentrates the togetherness, putting more at risk in that container. And so this last year has been getting settled here in Portugal, where we left Canada 2 years ago and spent some time in Glastonbury, UK, waited for the right moment when we could make it through the gauntlet without needing the B or a test, and to land here the year prior in Portugal. But then it was really settling into a whole new reality for our relationship, with a whole bunch of a new geography, some new guidances that we were offering, kind of emptied the room again. We've been through several times of the room emptying and then feeling a whole new draw of different souls with different needs and different desires. And that's been a surrender as well. So there's been personal emptyings between us, and then in our small community here of and the people that we're serving, feeling a lot of change going on. So
yeah, coming out of, I would say, this whole narrative, if we want to call it that, we call it the C and the V narrative. I think it just really shook up a lot of different things for people. Like you said, the shadow revealed a lot. And even 2 years ago, we had a 7-week separation, which was a long time for us. and we really got the whole foundation of our relationship shaken upside down. And we feel tenderly about that 2 years later, and we're still in this sort of humbleness. I was just telling Raphael today, I'm humbled by Sacred Union. This is not like hiking up a mountain and then you're done. Like, the hike never stops, really.
Yeah.
As you commit to seeing yourself through another being, reconciling so many things, so many polarities we've had between, for us, the masculine and the feminine, and for Raphael and I, many lifetimes where we didn't get to be together. That's really our soul theme.
Right.
Our pattern together is, I don't know, priestess and king and nun and monk, and all of these situations where there was attraction and draw, and we just couldn't get into a safe room to actually explore what was between us and what was being offered. And even this morning we had a new opening into more vulnerability, and our sexuality going to an upgraded place beyond another multidimensional place. So the initiations never stop, and we wouldn't want them to either.
Yeah. No, exactly. And that tenderness you're talking about, I think there's, some things individuals, couples, groups do earlier. We get caught up a bit in comparison with the linear timeline, but we realize that, we've all got something to offer, and some of us have higher bands of frequency in certain departments than others, and vice versa. But part of what I picked up on as we got into the first of the year, now with my own experience, individually, with Morgan, as a couple, with the work that I was doing, I was in Sedona a lot. I was around a lot of people. We did 250 shows in 2.5 months at the end of the year. So there was a lot of activity. And on those shows, I noticed humility with people. I noticed a tenderness, as in, you know what I mean by that, as in tender, sore, not maligned or maimed, but I just came out of something, and I'm taking little baby steps here because I'm tender. I'm tender. And what was that kind of thing? So, that part of it. And, Morgan and I haven't really talked about that period of time. We both know that the time will come when couples will talk about that time, because I think it's important, because I think it was almost like a final push into the reformation of the balance of the masculine and feminine, just to kind of try to encapsulate it generally. But I like what you said, Jelelle, because there's a certain humility that was coming in on all those shows at the end of the year. There was a certain humanness that people were bringing to the table. You could tell they'd been through it, and that they'd come out standing tall, yet they had this humility that kind of de-emphasized whatever their skills or abilities or sensitivities or gifts are. And they were very human, and that's how I feel in 2023. That's what I feel like I'm looking at right now. That's what I feel like in like the evolution of my relationship with Morgan, is this humility that's almost like a telepathic thing, that, oh, you got it too. Oh, we don't have to go into this deep discussion because, oh, we've been through the same thing, and oh, we pick up the same thing. You know what I mean? It's like we're all coming to this common ground, yet there's no one or nothing narrating it, if you will, like in a book or a newspaper or a large internet platform. But I think it is being narrated. It's being narrated by people like you through your stories. Now, you talked about just this morning having another expansion, so that's alluding to another initiation, whether it was a day or an hour or a week or whatever. How does that feel when you come through on the other side together?
Yeah, I really feel those in the audience that are drawn to, they would see us as a couple, and you're sharing us as a resource here in this moment, and so they could project onto us, and maybe there could be some healthy projection that we hold some image of something temporarily for them as a goalpost. But what's actually real and what their projection onto us is could be two different things. And that's not necessarily all bad, because they might be projecting from their own authentic picture of things, and they're just seeing something out there that they're drawn to.
Mhm.
But I honor those of you that are listening that really have this yearning and desire. And it may feel in some ways like you feel an incompletion. But in your higher heart, you're gaining more ground, knowing that you are complete by yourself, and yet you're not meant to be alone because of this calling to union and community within of one, and then extending that into a community of two. And that community of one is based on getting to know the parts of ourselves and their reactions and their vulnerabilities and their hurts and their fears and their longings. And the time of being single, there's such a energy of man, there's not a single mateship possibility that I feel anywhere on the horizon, and the veil is thick and the curtain is down. And yet it's in that time I've always found that the alchemy of the work the individual is doing is in perfect synchronicity and alignment for that mateship to occur. And without a control panel, a linear control panel of making something happen. And then all the work that was done prior becomes very important, because there's wherever Jelelle and I are, we could say that, my God, we feel so different to ourselves. We feel so different to any other couple that we've seen as an example. So we may think we're at some level. And if there was some kind of a measuring stick, we could say we're here, we used to be there, and there's these places to go. And that would all be very questionable as to how real those linear measurement is. But regardless of where we are, there's a humility in becoming to this beginning again place of knowing that we're just starting over again at whatever level that we're at. And you have to normalize the relationship. Even though there's all this reverence and awe for what I have, I can sometimes, if I'm feeling a little down or a little bit mopey, I go, what reason do I have to feel a little bit mopey? Look what I have. I have this, I have this, I have that, compared to this. But yet I need to normalize what I'm in to be in it. And yet then I'm invited to open my eyes afresh over and over again to the reverence, awe, and wonder, and find movement in that. So there's this tendency to normalize and then open up again and again. And that feels like it's a challenging ground to be in. And I esteemed where I am today 10 years ago, I esteemed this as the ultimate. And now that I'm here, I'm not in quite what I pictured I would be in, because the picture was different, and it's not free of the challenge, surrender, and humility, as you're speaking to.
Yeah, I'll have some of that. It reminded me of a little piece I wrote a couple nights ago when you said that, because some of what's been coming in, or what I've been picking up, at least from my own stance, my own perspective, my own vantage point, is that these cards were dealt a long time ago. There's been, obviously, like y'all, like if we use the example of Morgan and I, there's been plenty of experiences of colossal portions and divine proportions that informed us of previous incarnations and time together. You were talking about your overall soul lineage together, and in this, what I've been picking up lately is the importance of and the relevance of that information as it was given through the years, and more importantly recently. And I don't think this just applies to couples. I think it's to everybody. What it was almost like the message is own it, not to wear it as a medal or an adornment, but to personify it, to embody it, because it is part of you and your uniqueness, your soul signature's uniqueness. And so that's kind of come in, and then these cycles and fluctuations that you're talking about. I love the way you describe it, because it's like you go from boost to human, like the human's just there by himself, and like you said, we think this, and then you're here all of a sudden, and you get this contrast. And so in this piece I was writing, how the human is catching up in the knowing, which you perfectly described, right? And that the soul already knows. And it's gotten so confusing. Every time I surrender, I thought I was going to lose you. But then I realized we're just beginning again. It's very much what you said.
Wow.
And,
Well, there's a synchronicity right there.
Creating a lot of those lately.
Talk about and feel together today.
Yeah. And so, Jelelle, I know that, from the show we did before and from following both of your stuff, that you're like, it's very much like a lot of couples. Obviously, the feminine is very highly sensitive, like a big tower picking up information and so on. In terms of the dance of the masculine and the feminine after all these years, I mean, we go back to 2012, like Raphael was saying, who were we then and what was it then? What was the relationship then? Because it was a whole lot different than it is now. We've reached some kind of higher ground. But do you have a feel for where that stands now? Have we reached a spot, at least, where we have the accessibility where two people can duplicate what they've done within themselves and actually have a new coding experience for the universal through our human lives? Are we on equal ground yet?
I mean, I feel like that is the ascension process, is really inviting us into that, beginning from within. That I think that our work is specific to working with parts of the self, and
Right.
also working with soul aspects from other lifetimes. So we develop pretty deep relationships with these energies, and that is all, as we call, vertical work. So what I feel is that this deepening vertically, that I actually think a lot of people have been in and doing in their own ways, it kind of brings them, often I see in sessions, into a void space. And it's kind of like, so now what? And there's all of the letting go of all of the 3D things, the configurations, the programs, all of the things that aren't them anymore. And I'm just speaking to in the relationship or not. Right. If a relationship survives that phase, I think it's kind of unusual. But then as they come out of the void, something needs to fill that. And what I really feel and what I've been offered by the divine is that love wants to fill that void. So that's a completion of traumatic cycles and processes that our soul has chosen over and over again as growth. That's my sense. And choosing to incarnate into the 3D matrix over and over again because of the density, because of the challenge, because of how hard it is to feel the divine and light and love, and to come out of that and arise. And that really is my sense, is that that's what we're doing this life. So many of us said, okay, I'll go back again into what feels like our last opportunity on this earth plane. That's my sense, to experience this kind of 3D. And you can see it with the recent narrative that 3D is collapsing. And so much awakening is happening. And in a lot of dark night and a lot of dark agendas and all of these things, but they're waking up people by the millions. And that is actually a very exciting thing for those of us who've been awake for a long time and are here to help steward that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people that have been awake, before 2012, that have waited a long time, like, finally it's here. Finally. And if I remember correctly, you two have an exercise, or have utilized in the past an exercise where you actually pull up your each other's inner teenager. Was that you that was telling me that? Right.
Mhm.
Now, I've never heard anyone say that before or since. In fact, I have a very close couple of friends of mine. They're a couple. They're a union, and they watched that show. and they and I was in Sedona at the time, and they were there. They came in and said, "We're not doing that." And they're both very, very, very I would say high frequency. But the reason I brought it up is because there, as we go through this transition, there seems to be kind of a handoff or evolution, different makeup, just with everything in terms of how we communicate, whether it be a couple, whether it be with each other. There's a lot of telepathy and intuition. People are starting to have confidence in it. And but to look at something that raw, where you actually have that level of engagement, you go in conscious and with pure intention to actually grow individually and use that mirror like with a telescope. Now, not to get into that specific modality, but how do you come into something like that? And is that type of process, do you think, something we'll be using, having these types of real face-to-face encounters, and just using that as a metaphor, that modality? Or do you think that we're going to have more and more of, or let's say less talking because there's more intuition and telepathy?
Well, it's not talking, it's dropping into the emotive ground of these parts of ourselves and soul aspects. So it is telepathic, it is intuitive, it's emotive, and it's very natural for people. We've worked with hundreds of people that can find a part, talk from a part, bring a soul aspect in. It's just the soul and has been so fragmented
Right.
coming into 3D. So it's not a psychosis or a mental disorder to have different parts of ourselves. What it allows is space, really.
Mm.
So just this morning, actually, my priestess, which is a combination of like 5 different soul aspects, because I've been a priestess quite a bit as a soul, just came in and had tears and said to Raphael, she said, "I'm really sorry for not letting you lead in the times that I have, for making you feel like you're less than me because I have the accesses to spirit that I have, and you're maybe more grounded in matter." And it was a sorry that needed to come from her to Raphael. And
Wow.
then he received it in his heart and could, well, I'll let you say how that felt to you, but that's an example.
Yeah, going to a new level of intimacy, because you burn up grounds in an alchemical relationship. You complete grounds, and it's kind of like that Vesica Pisces of the overlap, and the relationship exists in the overlap. But you complete certain grounds, you burn up grounds, and there's the scary part of, it's a breathing back and forth overlap, but it could, pop out and there's no overlap. And that fear of certain orientations in our previous configuration of our relationship. I was more in something more standard in provider roles. Those certain roles, a lot of roles have been deconstructed. There was confidence in expressing in that certain, knowing that I was needed. And the changes that we went through recently, it really brought up the amount of performance that was still, I could say it was very refined, and it wasn't gross like it used to be over here or quite like that, but I could still find a vulnerable edge of performance and comparison to the differences between us. And then also
Inadequacy would come up.
inadequacy.
Yeah.
And we used to go to a contention a lot more, and now it's become much more fluid to actually feel the vulnerability underneath it.
Yeah.
And I feel that even though we were sorting through something in talk, I was very sensitive to the nuances of the conversation.
Right.
And, well, there's a hurt here.
Right.
And that, I would think that hurt's always been there. it's just came up in another degree.
And my priestess could feel that she had to some degree created that hurt, that there was a pattern there. So it's and this I'm sorry, and also I felt many times that relationships with partners, but also with ourselves, is this ongoing experience of forgiveness. And we just help figure out which energies, parts need the forgiveness, need to be forgiven,
Right.
and also need to forgive. And we open up that bridge. And a lot of it is with the divine feminine that I feel that's my source of where I feel a lot of compassion and forgiveness comes from. So
Yes.
it just drops the defenses then that can be so easily in the space.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, and because it feels like, going back to this into this last year, uh, coming out the other side, being tender, but being whole in some way, like almost like we came out of a foal coming out of a horse when it gets born and it's all wet and it starts walking and then it dries and it gets strong very quick. But it feels like we're, like, just put it into the like the metaphor of veils. We have our own veils, and these veils, now that we understand, you could say the universal energy is reciprocating our efforts. People are talking about that a lot, just like you were talking about. Hey, it's finally here. I mean, it's here, and but I think that we are removing those veils, and in moments like you just described, really, that's like that shared embodiment, I guess is how I'd put it, where it goes to the question I asked earlier, because it looks totally different. The communication's different. The lifestyles are different. I mean, everything's changing. Linear time is leaving. You're doing some weird stuff. I mean, it's becoming a very different lucid dream type of atmosphere where you're very present with what's going on, and that's really all you know. And then to have it with an external mirror is, that's fascinating because of the new math on this side of it all. It's not 1 + 1 = 2 anymore. But yeah, this is and also, Raphael, I picked up on what you were saying, and I was sitting here going, wow, I can totally understand everything he's saying, and if there's any men watching, I bet you they can too. But I think you both pointed out in what you were saying, and just kind of go back over it, there are certain characteristics that typically fall in one set of attributes in a masculine, be it a masculine energy or an energy complex or an individual man or whatever the case is, and then with the feminine. And the feminine is the transmitter, and she pulls in that information. And what you were kind of describing and alluding to, Raphael, I felt that too. And I think part of what's happened recently is that the masculine sacred wisdom is coming online. And I think I actually wrote this to Morgan last night, which was basically, or I said it on a show or something. She had to find her power. That started the whole cycle. Like if you go back, say around 2012, all the posts and all the women coming out saying, "I'm back. We're not going to settle anymore." And then this whole evolution happened. And often, if you look at these relationships, the woman steps into her power. That's the catalyst. He then gets the good pressure of that, energetic force, and then he responds like a seesaw that starts to go, right? But I really feel like that something's occurred in the masculine field where he stepped into his power, number one, and number two, he realizes there is no issue there with what she brings to the table because he actually has something to bring to the table too. It just looks a little bit different. And part of the reason I say this, we released, we do sessions 3 or 4 times a week, and we were doing one last night, and it became an activation, and then we were told, you need to put this out there. So we just downloaded it, put it out as a live, and let people have access to it. But prior to that, the day before, there was another one, and we actually have that on tape too, and I might put it out. We might put it out. But in this one, at the same time, I had this electrical energy going up my right leg, my masculine, and it went into my groin, and it was very, very palpable. It was, you could feel it very much. And so I started telling her about it, and then she starts laughing because at the same time she was having one go up her left leg, and they both ended up going to the groin area, and then there was some explosiveness that happened from there and other things. But the point, and the reason I'm bringing it up, is because it felt to me that night and last night that there was a real stabilization of these two energetic genders within us and within our field that we haven't seen before. And maybe this is the front end of it. Maybe it's coming in with the moon, the full moon coming. I don't know. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on, just one more time, on that subject, because I know it's a big deal for a lot of people on a personal level, but really on a life level, on a human level. Hey, is this real? Do you feel like the masculine and feminine energy have buried the hatchet? Do you think we're safe to say that yet, or do we still have more work to do?
I think what I feel, like I said earlier, is if you call it a polarization, the masculine and feminine, there's also an attraction there. And I like to feel that we're moving more into compatible attraction. And I believe and I feel that that starts from within us. So we actually, rather than work with couples as couples counselors do, we work with the individuals separately and vertically. So it's a lot about the inner sacred union. So what I feel, I guess, in our way of looking at it, is that the inner sacred union is really coming into a lot more consciousness and goodness. And we do some simple guided meditations in some of our group calls, where you just meet your inner masculine and your inner feminine, and people are sort of shocked. We offer, get them on the dance floor. It's very simple.
Meeting their opposite gendered
inside. Yeah.
Right.
I like that.
And often what they'll find is like, wait, my feminine's all dressed up and the masculine is not even showing up. I don't even know where he is.
That's
or
awesome.
My feminine's just sitting there waiting for him. And then they start bringing that union together inside. So if they're single doing that, eventually that draws on the outside that so many times has that same energy as their inner masculine. And they're now ready to experience it on the outside. So I guess in our way of seeing it, I feel like that's happening definitely more and more. Because even as women, there's been so much masculine in our culture. So we really have had to develop this masculine energy. There's a part we work with called the inner protector. And that's pretty obvious. That's our defense. And it's always got a masculine energy to it. Sometimes it shows up as Joan of Arc, but even that will have a masculine energy to it. And the feminine is just sort of off sequestered somewhere, hugely protected and not really getting to interface with reality. So I think it's because it becomes safer inside of people, whatever way this is our way of connecting to those energies and bringing union, then they can start to experience that on the outside, or they meet somebody and that person activates it. I think it's different in what we call a counterpart bond. Sometimes that person represents your masculine or feminine in this way. That's what I experienced with Raphael. Just a lot of lifetimes where I was the feminine and he was the masculine, and we were in a kind of mateship. Or not, but some kind of relationship. And we also connect in our work to what we call the pair bond. I guess it's what people say is twin flame. I like pair bond. That's just what the name that came to me. It's above or around the soul family monad level. And at that level, it's kind of like there's a picture that floats around, a meme where they're separated, they're connected at the bottom, and then they separate like that. And that's what I see of the pair bond. And actually feeling, Raphael and I viscerally felt the separation, like falling down and away from each other and into so many lifetimes. And I don't know how common, or if everyone's does that, or I think it depends on the soul choosing that way of embodying.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I can relate to some of that. But and I don't know how it is for y'all, but there just seems to be, and they're not like book level, not even a chapter. They're just like flashes of all this multidimensionality. I guess all of these memories, you might say, which I see as code, and they seem to be coming online really fast. And I know I'm not the only one. And again, in the last week, I noticed this mentioning of this type of work, but not from a romantic level, from a almost, I don't want to say like a plan, a mission, a really unique situation, a very special experience and incarnation, but the value of the anchoring of universal code through the conscious efforts of these avatars that we walk the earth with, and how, as a force of, you might say, cosmic physics or spirit science or whatever, that it's a real force and has been on this earth for quite some time. And you almost want to say, even whether it be us individually or couples, is we've done a heck of a job here. For all the pain and suffering and doubting and lack of confidence and self-consciousness that we have had and still continue to a degree, it's lessening. Wow, we've done some major work here, not to be underestimated. And going back to the beginning of the show, when I mentioned likes and comments, and I got this download years and years ago, some of the stuff that we almost walk by, which is why I love this show, these people that are carrying sacred code information, frequency, illumination, their reach is worldwide. It's what's built this new grid. It's what's anchored the let's just say the post of the new grid, or the structural components that hold it up, or however you want to put it. But I really feel like it's coming online now, so I wouldn't be surprised if you guys go viral, and people like you. Seriously.
Well, here's the thing about like going viral, and literally versus there's a certain way that if one of us figures it out, whatever it is, in whatever domain of learning or understanding or relationality, I have this strong sense that if one of us figures it out, we've all figured it out. It's all in whether we call it being deposited into the Akashic record, but it's available, and it's because of the one mind that we are and the one that we share. That feels really profound to me. And so if I'm learning that in a cave by myself or with my mate, without any influence that could be measurable into the world, I think it's, as you're speaking to, the energy of that's the most profound service to the one that we are, and not just amongst human beings, but to all of consciousness, and not just to this planet, but to all of consciousness itself in all of its locations and forms. And I am being benefited by somebody who's sorting through whatever they're sorting through. And that it brings a tremendous amount of purpose and meaning and value. So in a world where I need to put some value into the world to receive from its generosity in reciprocity, that might be something that doesn't look very flashy at all, but it's a deep service to the one that we are and share. And that's humbling for a man, especially to surrender and submit to the value of that.
Yeah.
If there's still a need, maybe coming for something like the inner teenager, to have a lot of validation or acknowledgement from some place inside that doesn't feel validated or acknowledged. And so these sped up times that we're in, we might be drawing upon something that's giving us an experienced reality that the hatchet has been buried. Or conversely, I feel that we might be, the way the energies are hitting us might be feeling quite the opposite. Like, oh my God, I thought I had my course kind of settled here, and there's a goodness and undeniable, synchronicity here. We've got this proof that we've been brought together and for a reason and a purpose. But holy F, we're hitting, the big, almost insurmountable walls at the same time. What is this? So, and I don't feel that that's a train wreck or that's evil or that's not part of the divine, but it's certainly not the ride that we're comfortable in. And so how we bridge to and experience these sped up phenomenons that we're in right now, 10 years ago was in its own way just as phenomenal as 200 years ago, but now we're in a whole new phenomenon that we're not familiar with. And these energies that are coming in and our interpretations of them, it's really grounding to get an offer from someone who sees and feels. And I've read Morgan's posts like this on the masculine and feminine. I go, oh wow, that is really an insightful arc of the new territory. And that's calming to get that insight. And then, but then experientially to be experiencing something that, how does this fit what I'm experiencing personally? So these triggers that we experience, I think, could be very heightened. And if we can experience a trigger not as something wrong with us, but a portal to go into. So I was really tempted in the hurt that we were speaking to earlier to not acknowledge it and go, well, I'll just take this privately and go sort it out between me and myself. Although it was consciously coming up, even during sexuality, of a feeling of wanting to be wanted, and the changes that I was going through and having this palpable emotional, vulnerable emotional state coming up, there was a real temptation to take that into privacy. But could I acknowledge it and let it land in the space where parts of me have been more accustomed to, I should say, being the one that's providing the care, providing, maybe it's the remorse over being the patriarchal. Now we're letting this feminine lead and honoring the feminine. And that's been a meaningful role to be in. But now I come out the other side of it to find that I still have vulnerable needs, wishes, and wants that were maybe covered over by some of the performance aspect of this nobility and this high purpose. And if I can first find the safety that this part of me can say it to me privately, I think that's a huge quantum leap to then vulnerabilize that into the space and hopefully not be met with a volatility that closes, but actually becomes a portal to go into a whole new initiation. So that's some of the way I see it being transactional.
Yeah.
The energy that they don't take us to a slam on a wall, but rather to what might look like a wall, but it's a portal opening.
At the last second. I'm just making a joke. No, this is gold. This is so gold because, like what you were talking about just before that, which was a collective and more general, this acceptance of, like you said, we signed up for one thing and it becomes another thing. Like maybe we're being birthed and traversing through dimensions and don't even know it. But I love what you say too about I would just speak to it this way. the way that you, because of the progress that we've made, and of course, again, just to put the emphasis back on the masculine, almost like the last piece is what I mean. Not to take anything away from that, but that now, because like last night I got it in the session, and it was, and think of this in a very general way, metaphorically and literally, in the collective energetic field. So this whole process started when she claimed her awareness of self and stepped into her power, and then started to look at everything that happened, and the trauma and the violation and etc. And she said enough. Now, ultimately, she forgave herself. So therefore, she reached a level of compassion with herself. She had no judgment. So then she told her story. Remember the Me Too movement, right? She told her story, and then what happened was the masculine started to say, oh, wait a minute. Oh, I didn't know that. So now he started to have compassion for her. Then she had it for him because she'd done the work that she'd done. And now it's come full circle, and he's finding it for himself. And what you described to me is how that happens. Like, I know coming on the other side, Morgan said to me, you're not talking as much. No, I'm not. I'm not talking as much because I'm thinking, I'm doing what you said. I'm having that dialogue with myself, and then I'm having it with her. And what I found is, we both had programs. The female, it's the mother program, right? Let me fix that. Because I'm an overgiver, this is how I've been conditioned, so let me fix that. Let me cook that for you. Let me wash your clothes, whatever the case is. And what does he do? He carries the Mr. Fix-It program. She says, I have a problem and I want to tell you about it. He says, well, let me fix it. Well, now we figured out that we don't need to fix it. We just need to hear what she's got to say. But it's changed now because now he can do it. And I think that's what you're describing. Being able to actually be present with yourself, to know yourself. And now I'm speaking at the men, on the men's side, because we didn't have the intuition level that they had. It was a different journey, but it's a great sign. So now I can actually know who I am, and now I can actually share it with somebody. That's a powerful, powerful thing. And to me, it speaks to the completion of a circuit. And back to what you both were saying earlier, like, what are we getting into now? So with that, do you have any idea what this is evolving into?
I mean, if it's all a remembrance process, then I would say we're back to a place of relationship inside and out, where a lot of the walls are gone and dissolved, and a lot more love moves. And I particularly feel the masculine heart really wants to open and be felt, is how. And I've certainly seen that with Raphael, and where he goes with that is, again, the parts and the aspects of him, and then he goes to the divine, and the divine feels him, both divine feminine and divine masculine, and he has a beautiful bond with Yeshua. By the time he comes out of that, to me, he's so vertically, and mostly solid. So I actually would go into more of a priestess rather than a mother.
Right.
I go into it, and I think that's common for a feminine space holder, right?
Right.
It works with people. And so I would just kind of hold the space, and before you really would do that the way that you have the last 2 years or so. So I think there's more access for men to that inner world and the connection, particularly with the divine feminine. This is what I'm seeing in Raphael. So his connection with, the mother energy of the feminine, this is healing the mother wound for the masculine too, where they're not projecting then mother onto the woman. They don't want to go, they came out of the mom and they don't really want to go back into the mom. And there's all this, this push pull that comes up with that. So as healing this mother wound, unanchoring from 3D mother, letting in divine mother, then we don't have to hold divine mother. We don't have to hold the divine in that way anymore.
Right.
that we've had to do, going back to the priestesses who used to, do that for men. Nuns did that too, but they didn't get any credit for
Right.
it. They really held a lot of the God connection, the true God connection, the true divine connection. And the patriarchy obviously was threatened by that.
Right.
So it really does feel like we're moving out of that being threatened by, and there's accesses for the masculine. I think some part of it has to do with how the patriarchy, as you said, is being revealed and
Right.
collapsing
Right.
on itself. So then the sacred masculine can come in.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
I know that you've both, obviously you've been together a long time. Well, in the Ascension, that's a very long time. That's like hundreds of years. But but
Yeah.
so I know you've gotten intel individually and together that kind of manifests in your work. Part of it is, your guidance to know what you're here to do and why you're here to do it. Does does it, does that speak to, in terms of our trajectory, does that speak to in any way what you think we'll be seeing in terms of your own role? Like, in other words, will people like you begin to become something that people are looking for and need? And if that's the case, because I've heard this, I've heard people say we're going to be put to work. Morgan said that for years. At some point, we're all going to be put to work. And I get that, but what does that mean our world will look like? I'm not trying to get like, oh, what's it going to be, and let's predict this or predict that. But it feels like things are moving very fast. And I guess we could say that in our own lives and maybe in these communities. But it seems like it must be happening on the world level too. Do you feel like people's hearts, the potential's there for massive hearts opening that actually creates a total shift in the consciousness? And do you think it will happen? Do you think it will happen quickly? Go ahead.
I think you're circling around that very thing that we've been feeling for a lot of years, that we have these tensions in our world and we can feel them inside of us. We can feel them inside of our coupleships. We can feel them inside of our communities, our traditional communities, our global community, our galactic community, of this great dark reset agenda. Then there's it seems to be countered by a great awakening agenda. And there's still an us versus them. And so there's a lot of activism and a lot of darkness playing against each other, still within a paradigm of good versus evil.
Right.
And I don't see life through that lens anymore, but I still see it as a valid lens and a needful lens for the evolution of our consciousness. And in my consciousness of not that many years ago, I was, a couple of decades ago, was a really devout evangelical Christian. So I would have seen this all with a very different lens and had a very different role in it, anchoring something very different than I do today. But I have compassion for the me of that era, and for each of us in our role, moving beyond this reset and awakening to a great reconciliation, an ambassadorship role that we're all playing now. And so this is where, if we figure it out in a cave and it doesn't get put in a book and it doesn't get 5 likes or 5,000 likes on social media, but we create some reconciliation here in the quantum field, that is absolute gold for what consciousness itself is doing. Right. Equally, if Jelelle and I hit a wall and I'm posting on Facebook that we've ended things and we hit a wall that we can't find a way through, and we have some understanding of why that is and what that is, but we're no more. That also is this evolution of our consciousness now shifting over into this great reconciliation. And I really feel the divine itself birthed duality, dark and light, for a great drama, a great unfolding. And that's what we're a part of. That's what I'm a part of. And so even if many of my previous measurements of success and failure become challenged now, because I prized this and I didn't attain it, I seem to have come into this train wreck. That is actually part of this great evolution. Now, could I be benefited and comforted? That would be in my relationship to the unfolding. Could I find some space with myself, with the divine, with I don't feel worthy, I don't feel loved, I don't feel this is a good outcome? Could I find the portal in it, in these sped up times, to find my home, to find my arc, to continue to go through the life that's still before me and that's before us all? That's what I feel. So I'm quite surrendered, having whatever influence we have right now and a feeling of being prepared. I do have that feeling of a heightened role in something. I've personally really had to let go of the numbers, the measurables,
Right.
masculine tendency to go, look over here. Here's the income streams that we're actualizing. Here's the realizations of this, that, and the other thing. And coming into something much more feminine, and even deconstructing many ideas of what this should look like or could look like, and having to, I think there's many deaths and rebirths, many train wrecks that we're all going through and bumps in the road. And if those can be reconciled within, it could be part of this great reconciliation.
Yeah, you guys are drinking the Kool-Aid, man. It's good. Very good. Now,
And that's actually the name. We're working on a book together, our first together. I've written 4 of them on my own, but
okay.
it's called The Great Reconciliation. So it's unfolding. It's ending up being kind of a channeling book, and we're going through all these initiations. So I don't know how long it'll take because it's not mental, but it's literally the reconciliation of what Raphael described on so many levels. And we're hoping to just share it, some of its channelings with Yeshua or Divine Mother or aspects of ourselves or parts, but also as a collective offering, an arc, if you will,
Right.
through what's going on for so many people, because it feels like we have reconciled quite a bit, of what we've been able to so far. So there's a way that we're lighthouses, those of us who've seen this unfolding and navigated it ahead of time. And I do feel that's what we signed up for.
Right.
And that we haven't quite been put to work yet, kind of like Morgan said, like enjoy some space now, because as our souls wake up to this and need you, and that's then an honor to serve that awakening.
Yeah, of course, in the true Trinity energy, no doubt. God, yeah, that's and I think too, this whole multidimensionality, the connectivity that we actually have just from us, not the connectivity of the worldwide, the universal web or whatever, cosmic web, but actually the connectivity that we have to everything out there. So, this I love the word in the title of the book, reconciliation, the great reconciliation, because it's so much bigger than us. Like, I've had conversations with, I would just say, my aspects, some of my aspects, not all of them, and it's obvious to me. And I said, hey, you guys have an agenda. You have a specificity. You have something that you're pushing here, and I'm going to let you know that, whether you're physical or not. Anyway, long story short, one way or the other, it's quickly conveyed to me that, hey, we're trying to align too. We're all in this together. So take it for how you feel about it, but understand we're all headed to the same place. And just because I'm not a human being walking next to you, or I'm an aspect that you don't totally understand, am I external, am I internal, or am I both, or am I you, or whatever, just understand that we're all in this together, and that from your point of your soul coordinates, where you're standing in this universal, you are all that was, is, and will be. You are full-blown creator. and how far do you want to take this? That's why I had mentioned to you about these little flashes of memories coming in. I'm like, why is this happening? And they're like life reviews, but not of this incarnation. So like the information I can see, I don't understand it all. Like Jelelle was saying, you don't understand it all, but I could see clearly that I was getting the best of those moments that I would be utilizing in the coming, what you guys were just talking about. Because I have a feeling now, listening to y'all, it's going to be an avalanche.
Kind of got embraced.
Well, and the opportunity is for the reconciliation, and that feels very exciting to me personally, to reconcile things we haven't been able to yet, and in service of, I guess, of the divine that also is trying to reconcile itself as well, in a sense. So the reconciliation of many lifetimes, whatever your karmic patterns are, the way your soul fragments into these different scenarios and situations and does it over and over and over again. So many times when I go in sessions with people, we go into something that's bothering them, but then we see the layers of other lifetimes that were the same situation. It was the same energy. Maybe it was a different setting, but it was the exact same, whether it's persecution energies or shaming or whatever it was. And then we can actually go into the layers of it, this life and the other lifetimes. And I just don't feel that's been possible before in the 3D density in the matrix as it's been. And we can now do that kind of quantum healing for ourselves and then for the collective. And I just, as a soul, am so excited about that, because I don't particularly want to incarnate again with the and do the same things. I will, if that's what my soul chooses, but I would like to be complete with some of these things. And I think there's a lot of souls, obviously, that have come here for that opportunity as well.
I wonder if we took a poll of the world, how many of you would come back, regardless of your religious or spiritual beliefs? How many of you would like to come back?
There's despair right now in the collective.
Yeah.
Our country, home country of Canada, there's this government-assisted suicide offering to people, and so there's this euphoric potential that we're talking about, of finally realizing something that we've long longed for in our soul, and like even almost in a sexual arousal pattern of orgasm, there's this building up, and we're feeling that something really magical wants to explode on our consciousness. There's the converse of that, of the most heightened despair also in our consciousness. And if that's true globally, that must, and I'm a participant and I'm of the one mind, that there must be some image of that still true inside of me, because I'm still here relating in this consciousness. So to find a part that's in darkness, to find a part, Jelelle found a part that was at the negotiation table of the World Economic Forum, a soul aspect, that was in that timeline.
That's my ambassadorship work I do,
And they were an insider and debating, being a someone who goes against the grain, but
whistleblower.
You saw me searching for a word, but if consciousness if it's happening in consciousness, there must be a configuration of it happening within me. So if we're struggling to find our masculine feminine balance, there must be something working that itself out inside of me individually. And then to scale it right up to the divine itself, that the divine, prior to duality, it decided to take on this polarity of masculine femininity. And it opened this Pandora's box. We're now in the reconciliation of it. That feels like it involves quite a sped up timeline. But there's all this hope and conviction of something really beautiful, that magical world that our hearts tell us is very possible, and it's more palpable and but hopefully that when we experience the opposite polarity in our circumstances or individually, that I have again and again encountered a part of me that feels utterly smashed. And in that moment, it's like a fusion with that part of me. And there is enough of me, and sometimes it's the smaller outer layer, like a shell, that can go, this needs to come into my consciousness. I need to bridge to this. This is what's important now. And I'm encountering a part of me that doesn't feel connected. So it's wanting to come into the reconciliation that's occurring inside of me. It wants to be bridged to, but its entry point is confusion with fusion. And it is drawn to the portal of popping a pain awakening. And so hopefully our picture of what ascension looks like isn't just roses and rainbows and unicorns, that it can be, we can anchor ourselves in a lot of divine support and the ability to go to higher dimensional frequencies and places and abilities. But I really feel we're going to need this willingness to also ambassador to whatever shows up on our radar, relationship externally, but the internal component of that, that's something that wants to come. And this is bridging to the darkness, where it's this heart of amnesty to the evildoers, recognizing that they were equally a part of the divine in their search of this awakening of love. And that's just something very, very different. The divine itself is picking up the tab for the whole effing caboodle.
Right. That's a great synopsis. It really is. Because it's our perception of, we've looked through things through human eyes only. And I'm a soul, and it's always a but they're the bad guy, but this is wrong. But I think what you're saying is that, Judith Kuzel was on this past Saturday. We had a great 2-hour show, and she's typically not soft. She's got some fire in her, don't get me wrong. But she's normally, she came out and said, it's time to walk the talk. Just time to cut to the chase. And for me, that really means consciously seeing things through my soul's eyes, which seems to be supported and as I step into that and really apply it, because that is responsibility. That is being a responsible co-creator. And I think that's what Jelelle was saying earlier. It's not what we thought. So let's go ahead and get over it now and apply ourselves. And I like what you said too.
It's what our soul signed up for, though. I think we trust that.
Absolutely.
Our soul said, yeah, we're needed.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We're going to go.
And you can look at things so differently. Go ahead.
Well, this beautiful opportunity, another thing just pops into my mind. I know we're just pinging here on different inspirations that we're triggering for one another. And this reconciliation going back in linear time, realizing that there is no time on a higher dimensional level, but this sacredness of every relationship that's brought us to where we are now, and the degree of the veil or the us of yesteryear, the us of last year, the us of 5 years, or relationships that have maybe been severed, that we don't actually, they're no longer transactional. We've gone our separate ways, and we've taken a journey of separation in order to come back together. It may not be this life, but I really feel, we're talking about sacred union and twin flame or counterpart mates. I really feel that every relationship that I've had this life is some degree of a soul orchestrated union. And so we tend to use that term and really elevate a certain frequency and a projection onto it that, oh no, your relationship, you're just in, normal mundane reality. And I'm up in here, the super high and realized. And I don't know where that currency will spend, but in falsely trying to impress others. But there's just this feeling of reverence for every relationship that's brought me to where I am now, and the sacredness of it. And that feels like the beginning foretaste of this reconciliation, that there's this ongoing forgiveness. There seems to be a really big piece. We're not so high frequency that we've tuned out the need for forgiveness or
Right.
the experience of hurt. And
We're saying sorry.
yeah, there's been this, I've had telepathic connection with people of my past. It doesn't feel fitting to send them, hey, and open up the relationship, because I've left the door open and they haven't felt bridged to me and where I am today. But I can reach to them etherically and send them a ton of love,
Right.
and open-heartedness and willingness to go anywhere, if there's a healthy exchange of mutual respect. So there's still boundary, but there's an open door in that boundary, but a bunch of reverence for these people were the God-given players in my staged drama of reality as it filtered into what I've experienced that's brought me to where I am. And so there's an utter equality, whether they were villain or saint.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah, that's like putting yourself in someone else's shoes, and often we don't think about putting ourselves in the shoes of a perceived perpetrator or antagonist. But
no,
but
no.
but I think a lot of that's a type of perspective that's coming in for people now. I think we can actually step into other people that we disassociated with or separated ourselves from, or said that's not us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've had a big role this life of feeling like the more caring, the more kind, the one that's holding the space, and that role has taken a while to thin out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, I can relate to that. Yeah. And I think probably all of us can.
Yeah.
But if I look at, let's just say, I probably shouldn't get personal. Let's say the two major antagonists from my perspective in my life. They probably thought I was the devil. I thought I was the good, the right. I mean, like what you were talking about. Why am I the one that always brings the olive branch, so to speak? But yeah, this is part of, I think, what's happening. It's not just the multidimensional memories that are coming in, but it's the ability to be a true empath. We all say in these groups for years and years, I'm an empath. It was fascinating to see the support groups that really held them up over the years and really helped people figure out what it was. But the empathicness is a superpower. It really is. It's an ability that can bring instant equilibrium, because you have the ability to basically step into another person's story or step into their shoes and see that oneness. We don't often look for the ugly things to find our oneness. It's usually the things that we find attractive, but the oneness can be, and I think you said this so beautifully earlier, those triggers, I think that's another thing. We're looking at these things different now. These are not being taken as personal. People are allowed to speak about their experience. We're still a little tender, and we all, I'm afraid I might say this or that, but I think we're getting a little bit braver because people are truly holding space, which I think more than anything, that's probably as indicative of being in your empathic powers than anything else. What is your website? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask you. No. I just want to get your website. What's your website? Because I know on your page you've got two different things I saw. I just want to put it up for people.
Our website is Black Cat.
No. Soulful Heart.
Okay.
Raven, our cat, joining in here.
Soulfulheart.org. And the full is 2 L's. So it's like full of heart.
Oh, 2 L's. Okay, perfect. Go ahead. What were you going to say? What
I was going to say is that when you talk about the empath piece, what we invite people to feel too is there can be a lot of projection toward this narcissist on the outside.
Right.
Oh, thanks.
There
That
it
was
is.
cute.
Over
Um,
here.
rather than looking at the narcissist inside of them, that narcissist is actually mirroring. So really finding the shadow aspects that's part of the reconciliation as well.
Yeah.
At least in the way that we work with the energies. So
Well,
just wanted to add that thought.
I think that's great, and it's a great thing because, and again, going back to the over identification of being an empath, because what you lose there is your awareness of your own narcissist. So I really appreciate what you're saying, and I've had conversations over the years with different people about it. But I mean, to me, that's probably one of the most powerful processes, I guess, however you would go through it, to actually go in and find and identify and align your inner empath with your inner narcissist, because obviously you can't have one without the other, and we are here to integrate polarities. But to me, that's been one of the really big I don't know, one of the big tools I've used over the last 6 or 8 months. When we take everything within and there's no one else, it's just me, and you really examine, why am I uncomfortable? I love what Raphael was saying earlier about I was going to keep this to myself, and then, you realize, at least you realize now that there was something that you were keeping to yourself, because it used to be a projection. So there's all these changes that are happening, and that's the most exciting thing to me, is you see evidence of it everywhere. And I want to ask you too, real quick, in terms of your practitionership, you mentioned earlier, I think what you were kind of saying, Jelelle, was there's more access than ever in your sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And also on the tail end of that, kind of another question, are you finding more and more people waking up through your practice, or even through the community?
Yeah, I think what I've seen, because I've been working with people, I realized the other day, like 20 years, I started young. And there was a way that sometimes it felt like walking through mud or sludgy. And it's just like getting, in a way, easier and easier for the things that they've already opened up, all the good work they've already done. And I do tend to feel the work we offer is a bit more advanced. It's for people who've done quite a bit of work already, and just really want to go deeper into the subconscious, into the emotional body, into the soul field in a really pointed, focused, catalytic way. And then also people who are ready to have, this is the other thing I'm seeing, is that people are looking inside more rather than going outside to psychic readers so much, or people to channel for them. I just find that those messages, while valid, often don't really land inside of a person. They kind of don't know what to do with a lot of that stuff. So people are a lot more interested now in, could you hold the space for me? Give me a framework, so that, and that's exactly what we do in our work. And I think that's becoming more interesting to people. And I mean, I've had people in the past press me, like, read me out, tell me my soul histories and tell me my past lives. And it's like, no, I want to draw that out of you. I want to bridge that for you so that you will remember it, accessing the parts that are protective of those past lives, or what we call soul aspects, and then lift all of that. And then people are empowered. Then they feel like, I can't believe that came from me.
Right.
I can't believe I was talking as an Arcturian, we'll bring in divine energies, we'll bring in our intuitions, we'll do some reframing, but really we're just there to hold the space for that soul to come forward. And I think that's a shift also in space holding itself. So that's what I would say.
Yeah.
Is changing.
Yeah. And I think too, that's another change on the front lines, is going back to the mother and fixer. The man's the fixer. The women carry the maternal. We're naturally in the heart. We naturally want to help people but that's being able to, especially now, with men starting to verbalize. But it certainly works both ways, and that is to allow whatever it is to be said that needs to be said without any solution, right? Without any, and maybe there one comes, but just like with her, he had to learn to listen to her, to really listen. Because if he was really listening, he would understand she wasn't looking for a solution. She was just needed to get this out, right? Not that there wasn't a solution, down the road, but the same now. And I think it's a little bit different because we had the two different paths. And you said something earlier about men. I saw this video, one of those little reels, and the guy's giving a speech, and he starts out and he says something like, if a man doesn't feel respected for his value and his worth, he will become something that he's not. He will do what Raphael said. He will keep it to himself, and he will appease and appease and appease. And inside, he's being ripped apart, and on the outside. So this isn't her fault. Just like she had to step into her power and demand, you see me for who I am. This is just a different path we've come from. And I love what you said, because it's not on the external to provide me a place. It's up to me to step into my power and have the command to say, I'm scared shitless. I just figured out a couple of things about myself. I don't really know what to do with it, but let me just say this. And to be able to say that and just actually, that's the whole point of it. I don't need a solution at this time. I'm having a hard enough time just coming to grips with what the hell I just discovered about myself, or whatever the case is. But yeah, this is all gold. And can you tell us a little bit about, and I know you've touched on a little bit, I know you've written the 4 books. I've been to your site, not this time, but before. And you're working on this new book, The Great Reconciliation. Anything you want to just talk about with the book, and then anything that you're doing and that you do on your website, we'd love to hear about it.
Jelelle, that falls into Jelelle's lap because she's the webmaster of our website.
Well, we basically have really focused, especially, we are a community of 6 of us here in Portugal.
Okay.
So we've done a lot more community stuff. We do have our one-on-one sessions available. There's 5 of us that offer them. So there's a full range of price and experience level. But also, we now have a Facebook group, our Soulful Heart Portal group, to join on Facebook. It's private. And we do a live stream every week into that group for everyone to come and ask questions in the moment or leave comments. Raphael and I respond. We also do 2 group calls a month. One is Raphael and I. We're doing one on Sacred Union, actually, on Sunday. People can come to our feed and see that information. And then Kasha and I, who's a facilitator of our work, we do a women's group call. And then locally, we started a meditation circle here in Portugal. And we also have seasonal gatherings here as well on the equinox solstices. So the community piece is we're really a lot about reuniting with soul family, particularly those who resonate with the Magdalene energies. We've mentioned Yeshua and Mother Mary and Divine Mother and Divine Father. So that's sort of where we come from, and bringing the Murian codes back in as well. Did I miss anything? So there's group opportunity and there's individual opportunity as well. And then there's things like the books, and we have a lot of guided meditations on our YouTube channel. We've done 33 video series, in fact, going into all of these parts that we mentioned today. If someone says, oh, I'd like to meet my protector or my inner teenager, they're about a half an hour, and we do some teaching, and then we go into the meditation space. And within 15 minutes, most people can meet a part of themselves.
Wow.
So they're not even needing us, not needing sessions, but just to identify this energy in themselves can be really helpful.
Yeah. I think the whole idea with all the practitioners I've talked to over the years is ultimately for all of them to put themselves out of a job. And everybody's fully self-sourcing, and but this is probably where the the workload's going to come from that so many of y'all have foreseen. But it sure feels like it's on. It sure feels like we're in it now. It's no
Right.
more this coming stuff.
The reconciliation, maybe what's preceding it, or the phase we're in leading up to it, is the reconfiguration. I think where each of us are letting go of certain things, embracing new things. We're
Yeah.
finding a new orbit, hopefully having sacred completions in order to make room for new openings.
Did you want to mention Raphael would love to do a men's group call too to add to our schedule?
Yes,
So if any men are interested.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Our work has had a significantly higher ratio of women.
Of course.
As of course is so true of many things that are offered that go into spirituality in the heart. But there's keen desire to create a men's space that is a monthly group call that would mirror the women's group call that has gone on for years. And rather though than just putting that out there and saying, "Hey guys, here's the deal. Let's get in this room and be spiritual together," I wanted to draw a core of men, and that's just starting to form, of men that are more closer in our orbit and more familiar with our work and our modality, and they could anchor the room together. Gabriel and myself, one of our long-standing community members and my closest friend, and are wanting to, possibly this month coming up, but it's just about to pop open, where we want to schedule that, feeling that coalescence of energy rather than this marketing energy. Come here and for 2 hours, and here's all the benefits you'll get, and here's a price. These things are, we like to do it by voluntary donation of any amount, just to create intentionality. So there's that desire, and that's stirring my heart. It's feeling like a much deeper calling to say, I'm called to lead this. I'm called to be a lightning rod to draw that together.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think we'll see a lot more men's groups popping up, and I think they'll be different. I think they'll be different than what we, like you were basically alluding to a minute ago. In fact, I was talking to Morgan about it yesterday. Let me bounce this off of you, because she does those groups. She does a few groups a week, and it's very different than traditional gatherings, but I think you'll see more and more of that. There's a lot of silence, a lot like the video we put out last night of our session. But my thought was, because I've had that calling too for a long time, I thought I want to, there'll come a time where I want to be a part of this newly evolving, let's build a bridge, let's facilitate it somehow or participate somehow. But to really dig into those things we kept to ourselves and still do. To have a conversation like we've never had before, without any women, because it needs to be, you know what I mean? It needs to be that container first. But to talk about the things that we never talk about. And I love what you said about, the moving away from the commercialism, the marketing. Obviously, we all have to make a living and sustain ourselves. But I think the contribution of choice is a great way to do it. But to get into these subjects of pornography, masturbation, the whys. How did this happen? And to me, it's not even the story so much as getting a bunch of them together, and instead of talking strictly about the multidimensionality and the soul and this and that, but to actually get into the human and examine because I think what we'll discover is that although all of our stories won't be exactly the same, we've all gone through the same thing. And we've all been too scared to talk about it because we thought we were the only one. And I think that is something I've also seen on this show, because people will write to Morgan and I and say, oh my God, I saw this lady talking about being visited by Arcturians, and that's never happened to me, but I get visited by fairies every night. So she found somebody else that, even though the story wasn't the same, that is in the same bit of weirdness or the same, the window into the other side. And I think this is this human data, especially right now with the men, because think about the impact of let's just say a strong minority or majority of men's hearts truly opening up into the field at this point, where you've had so much movement from the feminine and even the third energy. That would be colossal. Yeah. So I really applaud you for pulling men together, and I would encourage any and all men to do the same thing, because intentions are everything. Even if you don't know exactly what to do, let's just come and have a conversation and cut the bullshit and really talk as we would talk to ourselves.
Yeah. Where the rubber meets the road for men. I think that's really, really important. Gabriel just started, we have a tab on our website called Soul Fire for Men, and Gabriel and I share there our vision for men. But Gabriel just started, he felt the intention, just instead of doing a teaching, inspirational release of videos, I want to do a trajectory here of sharing my story and really vulnerabilizing what's going on for me and how I've related to life in this last healing journey of the last 10 years and where I'm at now and what I've come through. And I've really appreciated him doing that, because it really opens this transparent. I love the word transparent so much. Mm-hmm. It's the word parent, and we transparent. And possibly everything that's wrong in the world would evaporate if we were more transparent. And the consciousness is raising. We're living in glass houses more and more. But if we could talk about the journey through our addictions, like you named, that big monster in the room, that we're not going nowhere till that we get a little wiggle room from captivity that we're feeling, that changes a lot when a man can just vulnerably share that. And Gabriel's doing that on a video series. He's 2 videos in and has the intention of continuing. But any man that joins in that is such gold for us, because just a little bit of support, guys, thank you, that touched me, it moved me. That's an exchange, and that's a co-creative something.
Yeah. Well, there's just a power, and I've seen it in her groups. There's everyone comes together with the same intention. That in itself creates a field, and you would know this as practitioners, because you're only going to be as effective as the expanse of the client's field, their willingness to be transparent, so to speak. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think that's, and I never thought of that. Transparent. Parent is in that word. I never thought about that. But I love that word, and I think that's our true nature. And it'd be, so many people think that, or not think. I don't want to say that. That's rude. Often we might get caught up in a cliche or a program or a modality or a process and say, I can flip this switch and everything's done. But ascension's really not, or life isn't really like that. Called ascension, it's not like that. It comes in bites, and but I think we're taking some pretty big bites now. And I didn't mean to take such a big bite out of your day. We went over a little bit. It's been an hour and 40 minutes. We got another show in 20 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
I would love to do. Thank you very much, both of you. I'd love to get together with you guys again, not have such a 6 or 8 months go by. But I would love to get Gabriel on as well, and if he's interested, if he's doing some stuff like that, and anyone else that you're collaborating with that would be open to sharing. I mean, we have hundreds of people that want to come on, and but I'm always, looking for. We're always looking for, something different,
I
something
think
new.
it'd be interesting, Gabriel, Raphael, and you to be together, and
Oh,
then
that'd be
just
cool.
maybe even see if some of that conversation can happen that
Oh,
you
we could do that.
mentioned,
Yeah, we could.
as depending on how private you want to get, but just the intention of
That'd be
that
wonderful.
feels really great.
Yeah, I could.
And my feminine loves the idea, and I'm sure many feminine hearts love it too.
Yeah, there's a lot of feminine support in the room.
Yeah.
um, yeah, I'm up for. Well, it's definitely in the air because I wouldn't have brought it up to her yesterday, and it took me a while to get to that point. You know, but to me, without trying to get alpha or old masculine, I just feel that it's something that why wait? And if we're going to do it, let's actually do it, because I don't want to go through the motions, because we're all realizing now how to really maintain our energy levels and facilitate our lives by keeping ourselves in shape, energetically. But so to go into a space where people want to get real, men, I would be very open to that. So let's continue that conversation, Raphael and Gabriel.
Wonderful.
But yeah, thank you, Jelelle. Thank you, Raphael. I really appreciate, and I know so many people do. You see a lot of the comments. Really, just want to salute you for the work that you're doing on behalf of humanity. And don't worry about the number of likes or number of views. It doesn't mean nothing. Nothing at all. But you already know.
Could I just say thank you so much to everyone in your wonderful audience. The room feels very full with a real sweet diversity of people. And thank you for contributing your energy. I feel it going into me, just your curiosity and presence in this intentional space today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Peace out to you, and I'll see you soon.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.